Welcome to Agency Acquisitions and Exits. I'm your host, Peter Lang. Today, we have Eric Huberman of Hawk Media. Eric is the CEO and one of those well-known founders who not only has a top-selling book, The Hawk Method, but was numerous times Forbes 30 Under 30. And now in Hawk Media has a programmatic engine, and they're up to 14 deals, 8 strategic ones over the first few years, and now over the last 2, he's accelerated dramatically. I'm excited for him to unpack how straightforward programmatic M&A can be for your agency. There's tremendous amount of value and nuggets and lots of places for you to take notes. So let's dive in. Eric, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You have a vision that is being fed by programmatic M&A.
Yep.
Give us the background. How did that get started?
The M&A, I'd say there's a few different parts that all come into fruition. So one is I met my now wife a month after I started the company, who is in private equity.
You had to be doing deals, right?
Had to be doing deals, exactly. But no, actually, it's one of those things like anything else. You pull the veil over it, you realize no one's that smart in this whole private equity world that for most people is this mystery. And I guess now for politics, it's evil. You realize it's just another form of business, and you kind of once you start to understand the basics, it's like, okay, I get it. And then we got the opportunity to buy an agency 6 years ago, I think. I don't know the exact timing of that one. I should probably look it up. But basically what happened was an incubator as an investor in decided to launch their own agency. I was like, the hell, guys. And they spent a year, they invested in it, they did all the stuff, and they just ran it poorly, honestly. And I loved the founder. He still would consider him a friend, but they came to me like, this is not making us any money. This is a nightmare. Do you want to just take it over? I was like, well, what does that look like? And so that was our first time of like going through what is an acquisition process. We bought the agency from the incubator to take over. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, this is, again, like anything else, once you do it, it's not that complicated. Like it's just other people doing this stuff. And it's like literally anything else in life. And so once we did it once, then it came up again, I think like a year later, another company that was like, hey, we have this agency aspect and we're looking to offload it because we want to be in just this other business and we don't want to be in the agency business. Is there a way to do a deal that we can still benefit? And we did a deal with them. And I was like, that worked. And then it just started. Then it became like, oh, wait, we actually like this created a little growth for us. Like it's one thing to go hire a salesperson, ramp them up, get their network going. And a few years later, they've got a great pipeline and a book of business. Like that's one way to grow. Or reinforce our existing BD team and build that, or grow our existing clients. Like these are all ways to grow. But there's also this really interesting thing of just like bolting in a bunch of revenue, profit, staff, everything, and incrementally like almost chunking up the growth of the company versus like a linear graph kind of thing. So I liked it, and so started doing more and more of it. And then I would say I think Josh joined us 2 years ago, who runs a corp dev, and I basically said I want a system here. At that point, we had done I think 8, and since he joined us, we've done 1, 2, 3. 4 or 5, I think 6 deals in 2 years. And we've got a lot more coming. It's just ramped up. So 8 deals in 8 years, 6 deals in 2 years or a year and a half, frankly. So it's really ramped up. And it's just, we found our method, our integration model, our pricing model, everything. And also like our architect, like this is who we're going for. So we can we spent a lot of time with deals that we're like, this isn't the deal we should be doing. So we've had deals fall off and no alliance, all that we're like, we shouldn't have even gone that path. Now we're very upfront. The deal's basically done before a non-binding LOI, meaning like we put the whole deal together and make them sign a contract that is non-binding, meaning it's not really a contract, but we're just agreeing in principle that like, this is the deal. And then we spend some time going into the weeds, and we'll get more into that, but and then we decide whether to actually confirm it and sign a real purchase agreement. But we do all the upfront work and we get through it really quickly because we've got our process that we're like, this is it. This is how it works. Yes or no. Move forward.
In the classification of agency growth, you have organic, and then you have programmatic and M&A, which is building a team to run a system of M&A is what the vast majority of mature agencies do. Correct. When did you realize that? Because it's not just common for you to say, I'm going to hire on a corporate biz dev guy and they're going to build out a systematic program. Like you had to be tooling this up for a bit.
Yeah. And again, it was really early in the business. We were starting to look at that. I found that basically agencies over about 15 million in net revenue, that's how they start to get their real growth. It's somewhere around there. Maybe it's 20, but somewhere in there, you start to see some small acquisitions start to come in for the ones that keep scaling. And to get to the, 50, 70, 100 million net revenue. And when I say net revenue, I mean not ad spends and all the pass through crap, like their actual revenue, that those agencies require M&A, because again, the organic growth is super difficult in our space. It's so fragmented that to go put a person on the ground in Miami and now try to take on the Miami market with a salesperson versus grabbing an agency with 20 people there that's already built a little bit of a footprint and then giving them a boost. That's where and now we've seen success in that. Theoretically, that works. And then in practice, it has worked really well. And so what we found is the other piece of this is when we go into these agencies that are, let's say, 2, 3, 4 million net revenue, which is kind of our sweet spot, somewhere between 1 and 4, they're usually working their butts off. They don't have infrastructure yet. So they don't have an HR team and a legal team, an accounting team, all the stuff that is really on the founder at that point. And so our whole thesis was, well, if we have all that, we have an amazing executive team. So if we bring that in, take all that off their plate, show them the processes we run, give them all the credibility we have. We literally have our own TV show. We have a best-selling book. We've worked with 4,500 brands. The credibility of Hawk Media, thankfully, is really powerful. And we give that to them as almost a franchise model, not in the business model sense, but the idea of you're now Hawk Media too. And all this is off your plate. All you have to do is go grow it. And you've already grown a decent business. You know how to grow a business, but we're going to take all other responsibilities away from you. All you have to do is grow, and you're just going to make more money. It's really enticing deal. And then when it works, which it works most of the time, because that was the thing, is that sounds good in theory, but does it actually work in practice? And now we've done it 12 times. And it's no, yep, it works absolutely in practice over and over and over again. And so that's something we're really looking at. This year, we talked about it because of the rockiness in just the market. We were confident our growth was going to come from M&A this year, which is why we leaned into it so much. We absolutely started or continue to try to fix other parts of the business and make that grow as well. But we are very confident that was going to be where we'd get the expansion we want while we're, again, building the organic side as well.
Before you brought on a full-time responsible person to run an M&A program, how much time were you allocating to it?
Hard to say how much I can't remember the percentage time or anything, but I'd probably guess 20 to 30% was when I was in a deal. I wasn't seeking out anything before I brought people on. The moment I realized this was something repeatable, I brought people on. We hired our first M&A person, I think 5 years ago, right after we did a couple of deals. I was like, oh, we should look at this. It took a while to then build the process that was scalable with those people. I think I go through 3 people, 4 on that side. The 4th was Josh. Nothing wrong. The guy before Josh just got a crazy private equity job that he couldn't turn down. He was just assured he didn't spend that long with us. But before that, it took a little while to really figure out how to make this work. It took a while to get that person to buy into our vision, because even though we had done a few, there's the way we acquire and how we do deals is very different than it's atypical. And there was almost, when you're pulling guys from the industry, they're kind of is this actually going to work? Is this good for everyone? And then once they see it, they're oh, wow, no, this. And that's what happened with Josh, who now brought on one of his old colleagues, Scott, to work. Both of them work with us full time. And they turned it into an engine. It's been awesome.
Crazy when you have professionals doing their job in an area that you didn't have before. You touched on something that is very important as a distinction I would like to make sure we double tap on. One is people from traditional private equity and the typical deal structures they're used to and the propositions that come with that and performance expectations versus what it sounds like you alluded to is more creative strategic deals, at least early on. So maybe help unpack for the listener who's ooh, I wish they knock on my door, or I'm going to go reach out to their corporate business development team. Yeah. How has the offer from a deal structure evolved from the first initial ones to where you're at now in the revving of engine?
It hasn't changed that much because thankfully we nailed it the first time. What we found was we just shouldn't be talking to people that don't want our deal structure, actually. And because what we do is we just have a super aligned structure, which is basically an earn out in perpetuity, meaning as long as we're making money off what we bought from you, you can we can buy an agency from someone, they can ride off into the sunset. And as long as we maintain that business, we have one. Ours, I think it was our 3rd deal that we ever did. I'm still cutting checks to those guys, whatever it is, 6 years later. I have no problem with it. It's they're still making significant passive income, truly passive, because they built it, but they haven't worked on the business in 6 years. They left right when they sold it. And they were transparent about that. We set up the deal properly. we've maintained that business for 6 years. And so they keep getting a check. And so that's an option. But for us, it's great scale too. So I'm like, yeah, we'll do that all day. That's been the model versus like, here's a check up front, we'll take it. The issue I find with that is like, it sounds good, except for like, usually whatever that upfront piece is going to be a small number when reality kicks in, because nobody's going to pay you a bunch of money upfront for your agency unless you're at scale. We're not buying 10 million EBITDA agencies right now. Like we're talking about, sub $1 million EBITDA usually. And no one's giving a big check up front. They might give a small check up front, but then that's going to come with a ton of clauses of if you don't hit these hurdles and this growth number and this profitability, you don't get anything else. And so it's like, if you want a guaranteed small number, we're not your partner. If you want the sky's the limit and let's see what we can do together and you'll make this forever, we're the partner. And that, again, I've looked at a few people, like even recently, we've had a couple deep conversations where it's like, not a fit. You're looking for just a quick buck, which worries me because I'm like, if that's what you're looking for, you don't believe in your own sustainability. Because fundamentally, you do the math, we pay better than almost anyone after 3 to 4 years. So over the course of 3 to 4 years, we're a better option than someone else. The only reason you want to go with a quick buck is because you don't believe it'll be around in 3 to 4 years. Well, then I don't want your business either.
It's a productive way to interact with the market. What we find is you're going to have, through transparency and being honest with the prospective sellers, you're going to get people communicating what they need and want. And you're about trying to find out if you can give it to them, right?
That's exactly verbatim what I say. Is like, tell me what you like. Here's how we work. You tell me what your goals and dreams and what you want to be doing, both from like a functional standpoint of, everything. Just give me the idea. And then let me see if I can build a model that fits. And I'm going to be super transparent because the way we do these deals, if you regret it after the fact, it doesn't go well for either of us. So like, let's make sure that we're upfront about this, that everything you want, you tell me. And so that I can set this up. And funny enough, still, it's not always perfect. They'll come in and then be like, actually, I really wanted to do this. I'm like, well, so we'll end up, but then I can be flexible too. Like that's the fun thing about how we work. But yeah, generally it's just about, I tell them like, I'm going to be super transparent. I'm going to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly and how this is going to go, because I don't want any surprises on the back end. That's when we make our money. We don't really make money until we end up doing well with the business.
Is there any deal or transaction or negotiation that stands out? You've built some momentum now. Is there anything that's really like the story you're still thinking about and telling?
Yeah, Artemis has probably been a great one. They're still with us. It was an affiliate agency that we were a partner with. And we quickly became a big partner with because we weren't doing affiliate marketing and they were doing a great job. And then I just called the founder and said, want to just do this together? And he's like, well, what does that look like? Can we put a deal together? I think that's been 4 or 5 years. And I mean, we 8x that business in 2. And like, he's making way more money than he was by himself. And we have a huge department of Hawk Media. I think it's actually the 3rd largest department at Hawk now. And it was all through M&A. So yeah, there's been great stuff like that.
You also expanded internationally. Maybe pull back. What is the vision of your M&A approach to the market? How far, how wide, how many languages and currencies?
Marketing world domination. That's it. Yeah.
So
that is our mission.
Which is fun. But what's next on the horizon? So you did expand to Canada, and Canada is a different for anyone who's not done business overseas. You're making a commitment to approach different markets, and that can become challenging for a variety of reasons, not just culturally. So give us a little bit more about your international global interest.
Yeah, we found like that we can really do a good job of Canada's easy, and we'll talk to that in a sec. But in general, we can service international clients really well here. So that's where the expansion starts, is how do we get boots on the ground to build those relationships to be like, hey, if you want to bring your brand in the United States, we have this platform. And again, it goes, do I hire a partnership person in UK and then have them run around and try to build a book? Or do I just build a business that's already got a bunch of relationships and go from there? And so that's where that idea comes in. And I'd say we're really opportunistic in that. Like it's about meeting a great founder and a great agency and seeing if we can find a partnership. Pretty much open globally, depending on what pops up, honestly. Canada, we bought a creative agency there that, there was a cost of service, an employment cost that's a lot lighter there. While they're culturally very similar, very nice people, I'd say is the big nuance. But no. And then our software side, Hawk AI, we bought a software company up there that had built everything we had been wanting to build on top of all this AI we had put together. And so it was an easy merger. And so we talked to them about coming in and building that with us. And that was, a year and a half ago. And that's been great too. So those 2 things were how we ended up in Canada. But again, it's just finding great founders of agencies, finding someone that's a fit that we also feel like 1 + 1 can equal 3. That's really where these deals make sense, is like, if you're going to come on board and you're going to make the same amount of money, well, that sucks. Why don't you just keep your business? If you're going to come on board and make more money, but we're not going to make any, well, that sucks too. So like, there's got to be enough, it's got to be a smaller piece of a bigger pie kind of equation that pencils out. And so we run those numbers when we're having these conversations, but it's got to be the agency founder generally has to be the right personality. And that's, again, there's another side to these deals where it's like they want out and we're just taking over. But usually that founder has a core skill set that we want to let them focus on while we build around them and bring them all the other support. And for someone overseas, a lot of times, like we really want someone that's going to go build tons of relationships. We're going to give them a bunch more credibility. Europe, as an example, our credibility goes a lot further. So like the US, well, brands hire these young, nimble, innovative companies all day. And it's kind of that entrepreneurial culture that doesn't go away very much. And so you start a company and in a year, you can be working with Fortune 500 brands. Culturally in Europe, very different. They want to see track record. They take their time. They want to know that you've been around. And so I can bring that to European agencies and be like, well, we're that institution that they want to see an institution behind. And so that's been helpful there too.
Due diligence on these companies. Building a deal team, talking to owners and founders, that's the easy part, kind of the fun part, right? And maybe even the preferred part. When it comes to doing due diligence on these deals, I assume the way you structure them gives you a little bit more leeway than traditional due diligence. Unpack what DD looks like. What should a seller expect when interacting with Hawk? And then what have you learned or modified over the years?
Yeah, we got a lot heavier on diligence. The first step is financial. We always do that because it's the most objective step. And so we can just go look at your finances and understand the business pretty quickly from just a business model standpoint. We basically we have our own sheet that we try to fit in your P&L and your balance sheet and everything into how we look at a business. And basically have a scorecard of like, this is what they're spending on, this is where their expenses are, this is how they're running it, to get an idea for your margins, where you're making your money, where your expenditures are, how you're generating revenue, all those kind of things. That's the start. That helps us put together, frankly, an initial offer because it really is a financial relationship in that sense. And then from there, we have our head of HR, finance, services, marketing, sales, and then our corp dev team, my partner, so our COO basically, and myself, all go through different aspects of diligence based on their own purview. So like our HR person will go through all their benefits, all their personnel, how are they training these people, where are they getting them from, what are they covering on the benefit side, and like a whole laundry list of things from an HR perspective of like, how is this going to integrate with what we do? Are we going to bring them on and, are they offering, we're going to pay for you to work at a 5-star resort somewhere else for 3 months a year? Like there's some crazy stuff that some companies do, and figuring all that out so that we don't end up being a bad move for their employees because, in an agency world, product is your people. So you got to keep that. That's a piece. And then services is a lot of like, are they good practitioners? Are they actually good at marketing? Are they going to fit into the way we do things? And like, how is that going to mesh? How does this fit with our model? Where can these people sit once we fully integrate, which we take our time doing, but over time, we want all these people to fit into teams at Hawk. So there's that piece too. Then we have, again, marketing and sales is more, usually, again, the founder is more of a BD person. And so it's just showing them some of the stuff we do and how we're going to help support them and making sure that there's someone we feel confident in investing in and putting effort behind. And then finance is obvious, like making sure that the books make sense and that this is something we want to take on. And then I'm looking for, culture fit. I'm looking for ambition. I'm looking for as you kind of talk to, what are they trying to accomplish so I can make sure that I align the incentive and that we're on the same page here. And then my business partner is more of like, how is this operation running? Again, where is this going to fit within ours? Do we have any creative ideas? Because a lot of times when we're doing M&A, we can find a skill set or an individual that's like, oh, they actually plug a hole for us. And so they end up with a promotion and a bigger job because we actually needed something. And now that it's coming over, we can merge that way because we really try not to cut people. We're buying profitable agencies. We don't want to go in there and be a chop shop. That's bad to do with a person business. So yeah, all this is part of it.
You talked about being opportunistic, but now you just got to flag something, which is strategically filling holes in Hawk.
Yeah.
How are you?
So opportunistic on the country expansion. In terms of like what types of businesses, we absolutely have sort of a priority list of what we're reaching out to too. Looking at where are the holes in what Hawk does that we could plug into, where do we like see a need for a leader and we could maybe find an agency owner that could be that leader, or where do we see a need for a new department, those kind of things. We'll look for that for sure.
Let's unpack that a bit because I say you can solve all business problems with mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah.
And that's a very ambitious statement if you've never done deals before, but you are actually doing that.
Yeah. I mean, that was, the affiliate thing with Artemis. Like, that's exactly what we did. We didn't have an affiliate department. We used a partner. That partner became a big partner. And then we went, why don't we just do this together? Like, stop being separate businesses. Like that is an example of that. And so we continue to do that in ways of like when we're looking at new opportunities and continuing to discuss like, oh, maybe we should have a department that does X. Let's go see if someone started to build it. Because that's the interesting thing about the agency world. There's 45,000 agencies in the US. It takes almost nothing to start one, to run one, to keep one, to build one, a lot, but to start one, nothing. And so a lot of times we can find these people that almost ended up running an agency on accident. They just built up to a couple $1 million. And now they're like, what am I doing? I don't want to run this. I just want to do this. And we can come in and be a partner to that. So that's a great way to, expand and fill holes and all that.
If I'm one of those companies who was created by an accidental entrepreneur and I am listening to Eric and I'm saying, what problems are they trying to solve with M&A to do a deal with potentially my company? What are some of the things that are on the horizon that you're looking to maybe expand into so they can hear their own name be called?
Sure. And I think it's important to say, like, there's an example here. Like, let's say, like, one of our biggest channels is our social media advertising. We will buy another social media advertising firm and find a way to merge that in. It depends on the founder and what they're trying to do and all that. But like, the nice thing about these deals is you've got a business. We don't need to, it's not a hire. We're buying a business. So like, we don't need to find a role for you. You've already got it. Like, until we integrate, you've got your role. And the only reason we integrate is to try to find synergy and overlap and things that we can actually let people free up to do more of what they're doing, that kind of thing. So for founders, I would say, like, if you fall into anything we do, we can have that conversation, honestly, because it also like ebbs and flows. Like maybe, and this is an example that isn't true, but it'd be an example. It's like our search marketing leader decides to move on or wants to move into something else. Well, maybe we don't have a succession plan for someone else that can move up. So we can acquire a search agency. The founder can now run their search and our search, and maybe together, all of a sudden they're running a business 4 times the size. And we build a model that makes them more money because it's also replacing a person that we used to pay for. So those are the kind of things where all of a sudden we get scale. There's more money for everyone. We replace a role that we would have had to hire for with that person, and it creates a lot of opportunity. To be clear, our head of search has not gone anywhere, and I have a meeting with them later. So I was just using that as an example. But
top of mind.
Yeah, it could be other departments that we either already have. And let's say that head of search isn't leaving and you run a search agency. Well, we can find a home for your whole team. We can support them with a whole sales force. And now you can be freed up to grow. And you can now take your book of business and not just do search marketing, but spread it out across everything we do. And so all of a sudden your book of business and the agency you've built now can offer a ton of different services with a ton of expertise and credibility behind them. It expands what you're offering is just to the existing book. And we can free you up to not have to deal with a lot of that too. So it's like, again, that it can be that. And then it also is like, whether it's, getting into PR maybe, or getting into AI, maybe AI as a service will be something that we want to do at some point. Like, these are all things that that's where the opportunistic thing comes in, is like, if we stumble across someone and we really like what they're doing and we see that we could be rocket fuel for it, let's jump in.
When you talk about your role in the company as it's evolved over the years, do you see it being the same as it is now? Or do you think your role is going to evolve to be more of a chairman overseeing multiple teams, the deals? Like, what's your vision for it?
I think, and this is important, I think everybody loves to talk about the idea of like, I'm going to build a team that's going to run my company for me. And most of the guys I know that are hyper successful will call bullshit on that immediately. Like, you're not done until you're out. And then you've got to be okay with whatever happens next. Like, there's like, the chairman position works when you've raised money, you've got other people that care and a hired CEO that's going to run it. And you don't care about the outcome, like at your core, like an entrepreneur does. Like, you got to be done, because CEOs, I don't know what the actual success rate is, but I've seen a lot of failures. So there's a big public one that just happened recently with a friend's company that they hired a CEO a year ago. I was with them when they hired him. He seemed awesome. They seemed ecstatic. I always thought this was a fallacy, but you found a CEO to take over and you guys are just going to go hang out. That's awesome. Yeah, the company's bankrupt now. So It's local to you if you live where Brad lives.
Yeah, and I know who you're referring to.
Yeah,
as well.
exactly.
Yes.
So,
mutual friend and very close to that ending when it happened. Is a difference of being an entrepreneur and how you started the agency, right? And the entrepreneur who's running, if you expand at this clip, you will be global.
Yep.
You will be committed to more people around the world than you will, probably ever want to be. And your contribution to the business is going to evolve too, right? Because you have hopefully the people in place to facilitate this larger machine that you've built. So, because I get a lot of the drive, you've expressed a lot of the entrepreneurial energy, the interest, the passion. You've expanded over time your inputs and the things you learn and get from the job that you've created for yourself, which is exciting. And I think I've heard you once say you have no plans to exit. And you look young enough to where you're not going to die at the desk or the Zoom call anytime soon. So
I appreciate that.
So like when you think about like the next 10 years for Hawk, what would you like it to be then?
I'm at the point now that our M&A process is working well. The core business is working well. We've got sort of our feet under us in this way. Last year was weird just because of like what was happening in the market. Like having to navigate that was stressful to say the least. But we figured it out. Like in hindsight, it was fine. In the middle of it, yeah, tough time. I would say now I'm figuring out there's two kind of approaches. Keep doing what we're doing and growing and it's working. But do we look at the idea of bringing on a lot of capital at some point to go really big? Like you're right. I'm not necessarily looking for an exit, but looking for, is there a use of capital that we can scale now that we really understand M&A? And again, on the topic, what's interesting is, doing it ourselves, we can only go for these $1 to $4 million agencies. If I had some capital, I could buy equal size agencies and scale really quick. And so the idea becomes an equation of like, well, am I going to build a bigger, better agency faster at this point by bringing that on? And what is the risk of that? And what do I have to look at? And like, those are things that we're looking at. I don't think we'll do it yet, but I do think that I've become more open to that kind of more traditional PE model of the platform play, putting some money to work and leveraging debt and doing all those things to build something really powerful. And I think we'll get there. I don't know when, but I think that will within the next 10 years, I think there will probably that'll be an aspect of the business.
So you're keen or confident you'll follow the likely maturity path that happens for companies that start growing at the way you're growing, at the pace you're growing. There's just, at the end of the day, so far you can take it. The way you've capitalized it, the deal size and criteria you're going after today, the way you've structured those deals. If you're comfortable doing this, I'm a big fan of kind of unpacking the deal negotiation bit. Like you've given us a very clear image of an earnout based upon mutual incentive to grow. Yeah. And you have great confidence in case studies that give sellers the resolve that it's going to work. What is the format of that? Are you doing straight line? We're doing seller notes. It's going on the balance sheet. Are you doing contractual deals? How are you getting the mass deal volume without over leveraging or putting the company at risk? And let's forget 2020, 2021 as a crazy year, but from a deal structure perspective.
Yeah, no, it's really, we set up the deal structure based on the future success of their own business. And so it's, based on the cash flow and what we can generate with that business going forward with them. And so we do that with taking, the responsibility of most of the expenses off their plate generally, depending on who the person is. And so it's, based on just top line growth and what they can achieve or stability. And we base it off that and build a model around how we can pay them based on the future success. And so that's why this deal doesn't make sense if you think your business is about to be a disaster and you can cash out. Which is music to my ears. I don't want those people, but I think the people that do believe in future growth and future opportunity, we are a much better option because anyone that gives you upfront cash, if they're seasoned, has to mitigate that risk with whatever the back end is. And so that turns into a way different strategy, which we've priced out before. But when I price that out and I show it side by side with the deals we do, because I do it the way I do, I'm not worried about the risk of future performance because if there isn't future performance, I don't owe the money. So, and that means but it also can be a sliding scale then where even if things don't go perfectly, you still make a bunch of money. And so I can basically completely align their benefit with mine, which means I can maximize their benefit too, versus having a hedge. when you try to build those models and that's why these agencies, like I watch it, the agency size that we buy are selling for like 2 times EBITDA, and they get paid a third or maybe a third of it up front, which means less than a year's profit. And then you have to hit all these metrics to get the rest of the money. It's like, yeah, we can do that deal. It just sucks for you and it's annoying for us. And so I'd rather not do that deal. And for the people that are stuck on that deal, they're not that savvy. And I'm kind of like, that's when I'm like, you're the wrong fit. Like, go find someone to pay for it.
You talked about them being savvy. There's various degrees of sophistication in people who are transacting their business, right? How much education have you baked into your process where because you're talking small businesses, right? Main Street size businesses. This might be the first time they've done a transaction. What's that look like? How much education is there? And typically what level of information support do you provide them?
I would say probably not enough education, but because we're so transparent and explain how we do it, it's not that complicated. So we're very explicit in how this is going to work and what they're going to expect. So I basically I try to tell them, take all your preconceived notions about selling a business off. Don't use that. We're not going to talk about the overall theories of M&A. We're just going to tell you, this is what we're doing together. This is how it's going to pan out. This is what's going to happen. This is how the whole experience is going to be. We've done it enough. That's part of it too, is that. I think that comes with not necessarily coming from an M&A background. We just built it the way we thought it made sense. When we talk to some, and it's funny enough, we work with bankers too. Some investment bankers get it immediately and go, oh, that's cool. I like that model. And some are like, what? You can't do that. Da, 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 da. And it's like, yeah, that's like any great startup starts with basically the premise of we don't know why things are done this way, but we're going to try it a different way. And then it works or it doesn't. For us, it's worked.
Good. Typically, that means they're bought into it, but then they have these people that are consulting and advising them in this deal, their counsel. And when they get their experienced M&A transaction attorney to show up and they present this offer, and that offer, this attorney's never seen something like this before. Unpack how your counsel or how you go about interacting with these outsiders to your creative deal.
I love that you say that, because we definitely can't help. I love people getting advice, but advice is worth as much as you pay for it kind of thing. It's everybody's got an opinion, and it's I've had these conversations. It's this person says that I should be getting 8 times my profit up front. Go find that deal if that's what you're looking for. Please, I haven't seen that deal, but go find that deal. And it's that, and then they don't find that deal and they call us a year later. We've had this a lot too, where we go down the path. Someone's convinced that their business is worth 25 times more than it even is close to worth. And they go, okay, well, I'm going to go, talk to some other people, circle back. And then a year later, the business has declined 50%. They're struggling. They can't pay their bills. And now they just need to offload it. And it's why didn't you just do this a year ago when there was a trajectory and momentum? Because M&A is a distraction too. And that's something you got to be really careful of, is thinking that you're going to go get this big paycheck and basically cashing this check in your head and taking your foot off the gas is a big risk of founders. When we get advisors in, it just depends. Everybody has a different relationship with their advisors. We've had people that come in, they talk to their advisor, they get it. Again, it's a very understandable model for a smart person. So if they look at it and go, yeah, I get why this makes sense. And the risk is, are we going to take over your business and completely screw you over and cut you out, cut everything, dump the business? And I'm we have zero incentive to do that and zero track record of doing that. But that is a risk. If we are just being evil and doing what some movie companies do, and they buy a movie and then stick it on the shelf so it never sees the light of day, we could do that. We don't. That's just we wouldn't, we don't, and frankly, there'd probably be a big argument if we did. So there's no incentive for us to do that. So that's the risk that usually gets highlighted. Again, then we just talk through exactly what I just said, and then from there, there's the people that don't understand the deal structure. I can talk to them directly sometimes and be this is why, this is what, we're not trying to pull anything. This is how it works. You want to talk to the guys that have done it with us, they'll talk about it. This is nothing crazy about this. It's just unorthodox to someone that might be more of a gray hair that's been doing this a long time kind of thing. And so we can have those conversations. Then it's just going to be a function of, will someone be open to a new idea and a new way of doing this? Or do they want to stick to the old school model of M&A, which frankly, again, the 1 to 4 million range agency isn't going to experience. Most people are not buying that small of an agency in a traditional way. That's why that sweet spot has worked too. But it's funny you say that, because when that does come up, it's almost let's pull out that game plan. We know how to deal with that, because people get advice from people. This is the issue. I've had this conversation where it's I know they're telling you to hold out and maybe shop. you are the one doing that. They have zero skin in the game for you to go back to work and do all the shit you're doing. So like, I get that it's easy for them to say like, oh, you might get a better deal next year. Just stick it out. It's like, sure, you might. I'm not arguing with that. You got to go back to work for a year. You got to do all that yourself. And in the meantime, we've traditionally over doubled every agency we've bought. On average, we over double the agency in the first year. So next year, you could be making twice as much money with us, doing the same thing yourself, and maybe something changes, but most likely not. And there's also the risk of the other direction. So it's like, and then at that point, I just try to be like, here's the information. You tell me what you want to do. But I'd say the biggest thing for me is a level of urgency and like a yes or no. Like, I don't mind a no. If this doesn't work, good luck. We'll keep in touch. Like you're not insulting me, but I hate people that drag their feet and like, oh, well, maybe I should talk about this. And it's like, we give you all the information transparently upfront, very intentionally. We doing this or not? And what ends up happening, I'd say that drags it on the most, is they pull in 17 advisors with all different opinions and they can't make the decision for themselves anymore.
You give them a version of the future where they make more money. So the value of time, the time that they put into their business is going to be much better moving forward. How is that presentation? Let's get specific. Are you pulling up a spreadsheet, placing their business in it? You're then running a model and showing them how the model works, explaining corporate finance projections 101 and saying, here's how much money we're going to pay you. This is the performance of the business. With that presentation, one of the most negotiated or litigated items is earnouts in deals. And it is the burden you're putting on the business in regards to EBITDA or the performance of the business. You have a great track record of growing those companies. So maybe you haven't faced this yet as a struggle, or maybe you will never face it, hopefully.
No, it hasn't always gone well. There's been ones that haven't grown that much or have flat and that kind of thing.
Yeah, let's touch on a little bit on what are the things that people are concerned about in those earnouts. Yep. And then what recourse have you baked into it, or have they negotiated that is like now it's your standard way of addressing it because of those lessons learned in those deals?
It's fully aligned. So their success is our success. And so we have people that try to negotiate it, and our line is basically no. Like at this point, this is the model. This is how it works. I explain why it works that way, why it's in their best interest not to negotiate. Because part of it is the way we build the earnout is so that they're also not in conflict with the rest of our business. So we are incentivized to support them fully versus like, oh, we're paying them a lot of money if they do well, so let's not give them much support because we don't want to have that cost. Instead, I'm like, you can use all the infrastructure, our marketing team. I can divert our entire marketing budget behind you versus the rest of our business if that's the best place to spend it by the way that we build this model. And so it's like, as long as this continues growing, like you get full use of all our resources. That's how we build it. And so when they push back on the way we design it, it's like, that's why. And so if that doesn't make sense to you, then there's just no deal to happen. There's not flexibility there. And so honestly, that hasn't been the issue. We tried, this is being transparent, we tried a breakup clause, like 6 months. If it's not working out, feel free to back out. And when we did that, both people broke up because they never committed. Like it wasn't because there would have been friction, but because basically the decision point came 6 months later. And for those 6 months, all the things we needed to get them going, they always had 1 foot in and 1 foot out. It's like having divorce papers on your kitchen table in a marriage. It's like, yeah, at some point those will probably get signed. Like, because if you're not committed, you're not committed. And so we had no issues with people. We have had one person asked to back out once. It was a single operator that came in and said, maybe I can build the department here. And he did things his way, was a little old school about it, didn't want to adjust anything. He came in saying he wanted to run sales, then told me he hates sales. So he wanted to run the department. Like it was a little bit of a mess. And not really, it was a minor thing. And honestly, after a year of it, I just went, here's your business back. Good luck. And left amicably. That was it. So we've had that happen once. And that would be how I would do it. But that comes with we did try on both sides and it just didn't work. And again, if it's not going to grow together and it's not going to be a good thing, I'm not going to fight it. That's it. But thankfully that's happened only once and it was with a very small thing. But generally, again, if we dive in and we make this work together and both people are committed to making it work, it works. And I am to a fault transparent and open and honest and that. So there's never any mystery about what's happening. So I see that with our founders that we've acquired, they call me and it's like, yeah, we need to do that because of this guy's being a dick. So we need to figure that out. Once we're in it together, I'm just very open about this is what's going wrong. This is what's going right. Let's fix it. But we're on the same team. Your success is my success. if their businesses are growing, so am I. If they're failing, so am I. So like we want it to succeed.
The team you put around you talked about your corporate biz dev team. Those aren't the only people who help you do deals. So,
whole executive team.
So in this executive team, also potentially an outside counsel, or do you have inside general counsel? What does a deal team look like? Who are you pulling in to get the deal done?
That's the thing. We have a standard asset purchase agreement, and that's it. Like there is not a lot of legal. Like we don't. If this gets into deep red lines that are overcomplicated and I can't understand myself, we just say no. Like it's just like we're not making that, because every time I've had that where someone's trying to when their lawyer's trying to overcomplicate the structure, I go back to like the simple has worked. So no. And we've done this enough times now that our standard form, changing the deal terms slightly or figuring out again, those don't even change that much, but there'll be like random requests like, oh, you know what? We have this small liability over here. Can we actually put that in? Like the small, because we don't acquire liabilities generally, like things like that we're like making small adjustments maybe, but we work it all into that model. But like, it's just not, from a legal perspective, we got the basics done a long time ago. And so we don't actually need to involve counsel in it.
And that is one of the fundamental secrets to programmatic M&A. It's economies of scale by being efficient and lean in your transactions. You touched on something, so I think it's important to emphasize so people know it. In order to move fast in programmatic M&A, you are structuring a deal with a standard form. You're doing asset purchases, so you're separating the revenue-generating assets from its liabilities, therefore creating a safe haven for it. You've figured out how to centralize one of the hats or the administrative burdens of the owner, so they can focus on business development and help the business grow and help their earnings grow. What is it that you found in all of that you didn't know when you started doing deals? And it was like the aha that you feel the whole thing, because you talked about private equity has this veil over it. What was the aha? Oh, that's how they do this.
I'm trying to think, because there's been a lot of small things. I'm trying to think if there's a major one. Because again, I didn't come at this from like, here's my preconceived notion of M&A and like how it works, and I'm going to try to figure it out. It was just like, how do I make this thing happen? Like this person wants to sell me their agency. What does that look like for me? So again, the asset purchase agreement versus a stock purchase was a small piece of that, but I understood that immediately when I was going through it. I'm like, but I don't want your expenses. I just want this. I just want your people and your contracts and your clients. Like I don't want any of this other shit. It was figuring out, what the nuance of how to do that was. But I had a lot of friends around me that knew that stuff too. I'm trying to think of what, again, like one of the biggest warnings was trying to play to everyone's concerns all the time and constantly solve them, and being customized and learning that, as you just said, the programmatic way of doing this was the way to do it. And if it doesn't work for someone, it doesn't work for someone, because the people it works for end up being really successful.
If you were to advise someone who wants to do their first few deals, you get dropped a little bit of life experience advice throughout it, but more intentional advice. What would you say to an agency who wants to do their first deal or start doing deals to grow?
Yeah, remember that the cash flow component for a bootstrapped agency can be burdensome, because that transition of like, oh, now we got to get their payables and billables over. And the actual accounting of that, like most agencies, like if you're here, you better have some cash in the bank, because you might end up covering their payroll for a month before you get their revenue coming back. Or like there's little things like that, but that can be significant. If you try to buy an equal size agency and all of a sudden your payroll doubles and you don't have the cash flow to do that. Also know, if there's anyone that's, this just happened. We acquired a couple agencies this year. One of them, I think we had 3 people give notice when it happened and then rescind their notice after like a week or two. Like, oh wait, I want to stay. Like, never mind. So people that are already thinking about leaving will probably take it as an impetus to leave. It'll make people nervous. So you got to make sure you're doing it in a way that's not just going to cut people, because you might as well not do it. You're losing the asset of an agency is their people. So like, if you don't want their people, what are you doing? So when you start telling your clients, hey, we now merge with these guys, you got to message that really well. I think the first couple of times we probably lost 20% of the clients, and then we got it down. But it's like, you got to really make it a positive. Like, not just like, hey, we're now a part of Hawk Media and like, here's your new bill. Like, you got to sell the hell out of why this is a great thing for them.
You touched on acquiring smaller companies, right? So your range is $1 million to $4 million as a criteria within the categories of the business that you already operate, and then potentially new expanding markets as you want to innovate and grow. When do you anticipate moving up market? Because
we've even looked at
what's the largest deal size you're evaluating now?
12 million.
Okay, so that's a considerable jump from the previous deals.
Well, and I was just saying that's our sweet spot, but we've looked at 6 to 12 pretty consistently too. We haven't closed anything over 5 yet, but it changes the deal structure a little bit. That's when you start to talk about if there is a liquidity event, what is the enterprise value of that? And like, because that business, when you get to 10 million in revenue as an agency and 2 million in EBITDA, like there's a value to that, an enterprise value. Sub that, there really isn't. You're valued on your future cash flow, and if you sell, you're going to be guaranteeing that cash flow based on that sale price. So like you're going to be doing an earnout. Post that, you start to get some enterprise value where it's like, depending on the business, it's going to be hard not to give something in consideration if at some point we do sell. And so that's the stuff that we have to work out that's a little more nuanced. But because of that, we also take way more time on diligence, which is why we haven't closed something like that yet. Is frankly, like we've been working on one for months. Whereas these deals that I just talked about, we get those done in a month, a lot of the time. And these other ones where we're going way deeper, we take our real time to make sure. And again, so far we haven't gotten to the point where we're like comfortable, because that's where there's real risk too. Back to the point of like, if that's a $10 million business and something gets a little shaky, there are going to be millions in expense to that. And I don't know if we can absorb that, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, the punch is going to be a little bit heavier.
Yeah.
If it doesn't fall through.
We've had that. We've bought agencies that misreported their numbers, and we went, wait, what the is going on with this business? And realized they were completely underwater when they were reporting profitability to us, even the way they were reporting their taxes. Because we look at tax returns as part of our diligence, and it was like, you told your taxes you profited, you didn't. This was not malicious. This was actually just, they didn't know that they were burning cash.
Yeah, and that's an important thing to realize if you're going out into the market looking to buy. Right? You're dealing with unsophisticated operators, potentially. They're not fiscally responsible. They don't have corporate finance or business backgrounds. There are a lot of messy businesses. Yeah. I'd probably safe to assume all of the companies you've acquired were some degree of messy. Was there an A+ in there?
There's a couple A+, I'd say. That were like, for a $2 million agency, were incredibly buttoned up.
It's such a relief, right? Because the vast majority
there's some diligent people that they're doing so much of that is why they haven't grown. That's a music to our ears. Like, you're super bright. You just didn't figure out this one scale component. And one of the secret sauces of my business growing so much was I have a partner that basically, as he puts it, I made promises and he delivered on them. So I was free to go grow while he made sure we maintained. And that was the dynamic for a very long time before we built a full executive team. And still to this day, I feel like it works that way a lot of the time. So that is what most agency founders don't have, is that other person to help integrate.
Yeah. It's the visionary and the integrator, if we want to use Gino Wickman.
And that's what we try to be. Hawk Media tries to be the integrator to these agencies. This is basically the idea. It's like, you go be the visionary. You haven't found an integrator, so we'll be that for you.
To close this out, you've told us a little bit of your criteria. People know how their agencies fit into this. How do they best reach out to you? Can they reach out to you directly? Do they go through now your corporate business development team?
I will probably almost immediately loop them in, but I'm very involved in it because, let's be real. No one wants to sell a company and never meet the owner. Like, I'm a part of the process. I'm part of it. We're always going to be having discussions. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me. I'm by nature available and accessible, because for both this as well as the overall business, my job is built on network and meeting people and doing work with people.
Well, Eric, thank you for opening up, inviting us into the boardroom of the business and sharing, because this information is not available to most. Nope. So the fact that you're so transparent is noble. I appreciate you. And for those of you who are listening, even if you're not looking to sell today, it's always good to find a good cultural fit to who you might sell with later. Mm-hmm. And so these types of opportunities to sit down with companies like Hawk Media and get to know owners like Eric is one you have to take advantage of. So Eric, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Agency Acquisitions and Exits. Thank you to Eric for joining us today and sharing his M&A journey. Give us a follow on YouTube or on Spotify, wherever you are listening to or watching this episode, to get notified when we publish new interviews and episodes. You can also find me on Instagram and LinkedIn. And ultimately, if you know of one person, just one person who could get value from today's episode, please share that with them. And last, if you know of someone who I should interview, someone who has a great acquisition or an M&A story or an exit, please send us an email. As always, thank you and stay safe.